Good Sunday morning and welcome to WGN TV Political Report. I'm Paul Lisnick. We begin this morning with the long-awaited announcement that will change Illinois' political landscape for years to come.
I had to face the tough re-election decision for my sixth term in the United States Senate. I love this job. I think it's a terrific job. But I also know reality. There comes a point in your career when the torch must be passed, and I've reached that point.
Illinois' senior U.S. Senator Dick Durbin calling it quits after his current term is up. He's the #2 Democrat on Capitol Hill and has held that seat, his seat, I should say, since 1997. His announcement prompted statements of praise for a long career from current and former colleagues, from Tammy Duckworth to Barack Obama. But almost immediately, the conversation turned to who will take his place. There's a long list of Democrats already waiting in the wings. The first to make the jump into the 2026 contest, Illinois' Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton.
I have a little one who, when she asked who won the election and we told her Donald Trump, she broke down in tears. And what I knew is that I have to, as so many people were asking, do I step back or what do I do? I'm feeling exhausted. Or do I step in and lean in and keep fighting?
Stratton was a state rep before becoming Governor J.B. Pritzker's running mate. She's already got Pritzker's endorsement and a 7-figure financial commitment from the Democratic Governors Association. Senator Durbin said himself there could be a dozen serious contenders in the primary contest. So far, no one else has made an official announcement. Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi has amassed a $19 million campaign war chest and has spent the last few weeks making stops across the state. Congresswoman Robin Kelly says she'll make her plans known next week. And Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, she's considering a possible bid. Chicago Tribune political reporter and old friend Rick Pearson joins me in our WGN studios this morning to talk about what's next. Good to see you, Rick.
Good to see you, Paul.
It's been too long. Is it fair to say from your reporting that the only surprise this week would have been if Dick Durbin announced he was seeking re-election?
It would have been a surprise, but I will tell you, in the weeks leading up to this, and maybe months is probably a better term, in speaking to him, doing a kind of a wellness check on him, I would talk to him about, well, when are you going to make your decision? And he said, on my own time. But he also talked about how he cherished the time in the Senate and the relationships he built. And, we always talk about the Senate as that exclusive club of 100. He sounded like a country club member. And he talked about Lindsey Graham and Chuck Grassley from Iowa and his ability to work with these Republicans. And it really sounded like a guy who didn't want to go.
So, interesting. So that's why we ask you in your reporting. Here's the thing. Everybody's turned their attention to who's next and all that. That makes sense when you're here. But there's another level we need to talk about. And I want to ask you about the meaning of his retirement in terms of the loss of clout that Illinois will now have in the Senate and what it means potentially to the monies that otherwise might come to this state.
Well, that to me is the biggest impact, because everything about Washington is about seniority, and there's no place where seniority is more important than it is in the United States Senate. I mean, when Durbin, before he was a senator, he was a congressman from the Springfield area, he was one of the cardinals in the Appropriations Committee, which was a very important thing, but that's the House. The Senate it's a big deal. And you think of the fact that in this, what will be a 30-year span, we're talking billions of dollars from everything for O'Hare modernization to a big rail relocation project going on in Springfield, from grants to rural health care, inner city health care. I mean, it's just an endless stream. And when you have all of those years in, 5 terms in, you get a pretty powerful say on where the spending goes.
Well, and as we look ahead, Juliana Stratton, our lieutenant governor, already in the race. She didn't wait very long to do it. No doubt she benefits from the campaign cash from the Democratic Governors Association. Certainly J.B. Pritzker, the governor, will be offering her money. I'm sort of curious, what does this almost immediate early entrance mean to other people, we'll talk about them, who are also considering of entering into the race? Are they sort of like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, or does she scare some people off?
I don't think it's she that scares them off. I think it's J.B. Pritzker that scares them off. I mean, when you have one of the country's richest, wealthiest politicians And sure, there's federal spending limits on what an individual can give, but as we all know, there are all ways around that through dark money PACs and other types. That's how
Citizens United.
yes, and that's how the Democratic Lieutenant Governors Association can do a seven-figure. So I think it's the fact of one is that JB, as he himself, we don't know what he's going to do or hasn't said what he's going to do, but he's amassed this kind of control over the Democratic power structure in the state of Illinois. Do you really want to irritate this guy by challenging his chosen candidate?
And he's letting us know quickly who that is.
And the money that he has behind it. So I think it's an imposing thing. That's not to say that this will be a contested primary.
Well, you could disagree, but I think you would say the odds are Rajda Krishnamurthy gets in. Lauren Underwood probably gets in. Maybe Robin Kelly gets in. Two parts to this question. Number one, any other congressional representatives you think might jump in? And the reason I'm focusing in on that is because what is at risk for a congressional member who decides to go for it in 26?
Well, okay, let's look at how those little congressional districts have been drawn, okay? They're pretty much now safe districts this far into the map. So for a congressperson to take a leap for the Senate, which of course coveted 6-year term and the longevity that normally follows with that, but still in Congress, you give up that seat. You're giving up what could amount to.
So you lose, you're out.
You've got no coming back basically, and you mentioned Lauren Underwood, for example, as a potential candidate, and to me, I would put her on a bubble because that of the Democratic drawn districts, that's perhaps the most potentially competitive district in our area. But I think as for you look at Rajda Krishnamurthy with a $19 million war chest, and this is something that he's been looking at down the road. It's something he's wanted to do. And Robin Kelly has had a long tenure in the House, and she's always been known to be a little bit aggressive in trying to move up. But you also have to remember Robin Kelly, former Democratic state chairman, until Pritzker basically used his power to have her removed and put his own person in.
But I'm getting questions from viewers who say, what about Casten? What about so-and-so? I'm not hearing other names.
No, and Sean Casten went downstate recently. We went downstate with him, and people were asking, oh, is this like, the waters for the Senate kind of thing? Not really. I don't get that sense from him.
Yeah, I don't either.
And if you want to talk the Republican side,
I do, in a moment.
Well, that's a congressman.
But yes, exactly. But you're right. But before we get there, I just want to ask you this on the Democratic side to continue that. The other names floating around as we come to a state level: Alexi Giannoulias, Rahm Emanuel, Treasurer Mike Frerichs. I want to kind of hit them first in terms of what you see with them. What's your reporting telling you?
Everything I hear about Alexi, and even from what he's done on social media, kind of points to a mayoral race in 27. And, yes, he's a voracious fundraiser. He ran in 2010, was a bitter contest with Mark Kirk. And I think in some respects, he still bears some of the scars of that kind of that Senate race. And you were it was millions and millions of dollars.
He's been there
poured in
before.
there. Yes.
But with regards to, are you looking at anybody like a Mike Frerichs?
I think Frerichs is looking at it. One thing he does, even though he now lives in Chicago, he kind of brings some of the downstate back to this balance that we used to have.
Springfield, which, U of I.
Champaign, and Rahm Emanuel, no.
Okay, let's go to the Republican side where you were going. Darren LaHood is a congressman who looks like he's looking at things. I'm curious as to what you think of a possible Republican candidate and what hope they have.
Well, you're going to start in a deficit of, I would say, if you're a Republican, immediately 12 points down. So you don't come back from 12 points. You're looking at a midterm election off your presidential where the party out of power normally has success. On top of that, Illinois in statewide elections is a blue state. Darren LaHood is certainly one of the most capable members of Congress, but only one of 3 Republicans. Again, his district was drawn by Democrats to be a safe Republican seat, and he can have that seat for life. So I really question if Darren decides to make the run on this. I mean, it's the old line, it better be looked over than overlooked for a lot of these people.
Right. And same situation. If he runs, he gives up his
Correct.
safe congressional seat.
And that truly, no matter what future maps are drawn, I think you could count on him always having a safe seat.
All right. My good friend Rick Pearson, thank you so much for being with us on a Sunday. Enjoy the rest
Thank
of your
you,
day.
Paul.
We're going to take our first break. Still to come this half hour on WGN TV Political Report. Mayor Brandon Johnson headed to the state capitol, but is his pitch to lawmakers too little, too late? What Governor J.B. Pritzker had to say ahead of that visit. But first,
as elected officers, we all put our right hand up and swear to uphold the Constitution. That's got to mean something, and that includes a president as well.
fighting President Trump's executive orders in court. I talked to Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul when we come back.